You're listening to Jack of All Trades, Master of Nothing, a podcast that celebrates those who do a little bit of everything. We bring together creative people who followed the unconventional path, pursuing multiple trades, sometimes at the same time. So get ready to be inspired. Because as the saying goes, master of none is often better than master of one. Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone doing today? How are you doing, listener? How's your heart? How are you feeling? I'm still in Seattle. I'm still batching these intros and outros, so the recording process has been kind of all over the place. I'm recording these intros and outros after having done the actual interview, so it's been a little bit weird and a little bit trippy to actually release these at later times. Last season I just kind of sat down and did it all at one time because I didn't have anything else to do because it was the pandemic, but now I'm juggling 5 jobs at the same time, so it's pretty crazy. But anywho, I hope you're doing well. I hope your life is going good. I'm pumped for you to listen to my conversation today. I'm really excited about this because, and it's really juicy. It's a good one. I'm talking with up and coming artist, star, pop icon, Little Luna. And I'm just ecstatic about this because I know this person as Rachel Bell. We actually grew up in the same hometown. We talk all about it. I'm sure I'm repeating myself a little bit. But it's been so fascinating to know her from literally kindergarten and kind of see her come back and forth in this dual lifestyle. Initially, as an actor on Nickelodeon and as a child working actor and making that lifestyle work for her in LA and then coming back to Pennsylvania and having a pretty normal existence there too in a high school experience. So this is a really cool one because she's balancing different ways of life, which is we talk about a lot on this podcast of how can you make living as an artist or just doing anything really work for you. So that's really cool. And it's also amazing because she talks about how this has been something she's always wanted to do. Her heart has always been speaking through music, from music, and she has this incredible music out on Spotify that I just added to my daily listening because it's so great. She says this in her bio that's linked underneath, but I'm just even going to read it because it's really going to give you a good idea of what this is going to be about. But Little Luna is on the path of rediscovering her true self, and her songs are that journey happening in real time, inspiring others to do the same. And that's exactly what this conversation is. It's pretty rad. Her music, visuals, and fashion are influenced by the culture and curiosities of the early 70s. She's a groovy gal, let me tell you. She has been teaching yoga and meditation for 7 years, directs all of her music videos, and drops a yoga flow video with every song she releases. So, come on. Her single Last Time was featured on Alt 98.7 and landed Spotify support on their playlist. After releasing her debut EP, Through the Self, she opened for 5 Seconds of Summer in June, starting her journey of connecting with people in person, her favorite. Little Luna is showing us that through alchemy, the parts of oneself that may be hardest to look at are the parts that can teach us the most. And actually, just if there wasn't a more perfect introduction to our message here and what we try to do about releasing these types of conversations, I don't know what is. So I'm so excited for you to listen. And I really hope you enjoy it. Of course, we'll have a little intermission in there where you actually get to hear her music in real time. You can check out more of her information about her original music and where to find it in the show notes. But without further ado, let's get into this episode with Little Luna. Hi! Oh my gosh, Rachel!
I am so excited to chat with you today. Also, I just want to say I love the name of your podcast. It's very comforting.
Thank you. Is it? I feel like sometimes it offends people, and I'm like, wait, no. I'm not trying to. It's a way of we are allowed to do multiple things. People benefit from doing multiple things, so that's how I approach it. But yeah, so thank you.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that you have carved out time to do it because I feel like that's what some people don't understand is it takes so much time and work to put together a podcast. It's not just oh, we just throw this together and it's yeah, the conversation's effortless because that's just your personality, but it takes so much time to do. So thank you
Oh,
for having
thanks.
me.
Yeah, of course. And hey, I want people, I mean, the listeners that we have, who knows how this will go eventually someday, but I want whoever does listen to this to meet you and hear your story and who you are. I select people that have either like journeyed through the road of like going through different things and mastering them in a sense and moving on, or just exploring things that are interesting. Then I also have people, sometimes I do have masters on that are just like, it's like diverse, like they're masters of
Yeah,
different things,
right.
to just have a place where people can listen, although it is primarily based with like artists and performing artists specifically, so because that's who I am and who I know, so
I was
hey.
gonna say, like, I'm assuming that's like your immediate world and connection. So of course there's going to be the plethora of artists in there.
Yeah, yeah. We do have we have a couple in season one that are interesting because I really did try it. My boyfriend was like, "Everybody's a musical theater person." I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I do, Kyle." Well, okay, but then he was like, "Well, it is supposed to be jack of all trades," and I was like, "You're right." So then we did have I got some connections from Butler, or like I did like junior miss when I was in high school, but like I had like Amanda Geither. I don't know if you guys connected in high school or not, but her brother is a mathematician, so we had him
Yes.
on.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
So we had that. He's like a big like yogi and he like does math. And I was like, that's interesting. I'll
That's
bring
a
you
cool
on.
combination. I mean,
All
like,
right.
yeah, I mean, I think you know this, but I teach yoga and meditation, and I feel like math is very far from myself and a lot of a lot of like my friends and colleagues that I teach and practice with. So I think that's a pretty cool combination of a
Yeah.
human.
Right. Yeah. You have to, listeners, check it out. It's in season one somewhere. I don't even know which one it is, but it's in there somewhere.
I'll you do a deep dive.
That's Warren Geither's episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Also, I don't know if you ever feel this way, but I always feel so conflicted when I'm doing like I don't feel like I'm being interviewed, but doing any sort of video recording because I'm like talking and looking at you, but I feel like I should look at the camera for whoever is potentially going to watch this at home. And I always go back and forth between like the camera and you. I'm like, I never know which one to pick. So don't
yeah,
mind me if I'm just doing both the entire time.
it's okay. Yeah, you're like a trained camera actress, so you're like aware of that. And I'm like, "Wah!" Like I just like don't have any acknowledgement of technique in any way. I'm just like, this is it, whatever, take it or leave it. So no worries. I have a fly buzzing around my head. It's a good time. This
No,
is
it's
so here we are.
no.
But hey, let's dive into your life here, get some of your life story. I always ask this like humongous big question at the beginning, but it like helps us tangent into like other things. But just tell us about your upbringing in good old Butler, PA. I remember we were in the same kindergarten class.
Yes.
That's a good time.
Yep. And I remember there was two Sarahs. There was you and there was Sarah Fisher.
Yep. Oh, Sarah Fisher. She's still hanging in Butler. She's so sweet. She's such a good person. So
That's
nice.
amazing. I feel
Yeah.
like I haven't seen her since kindergarten, even though that's not true. I definitely saw her since then, but like my fondest memories that I like remember are in kindergarten. I have the cutest picture that my mom or grandma or someone took of me and Sarah Fisher like holding hands at kindergarten graduation with our like
Oh.
way too big graduation paper little hats on. It's precious. But good to know she's doing well. Yes, I am born and raised from Butler, Pennsylvania, and my mom has always loved the theater and was a part of the theater when she was younger. And my mom and my dad both are just avid music lovers and music listeners. So in my house, even though no one was pointing me towards the arts, naturally it was just around my house. Like my mom's a poet, she wrote poetry, like my dad's creative in the ways he's creative, and like that was just always a strong theme in our house, even though no one was directly like pushing me towards one of those artistic paths. And I tried different sports. I quit all of them. I did taekwondo, I did ballet, I quit them all. I just like didn't, connect on a deep level to want to stay with what it takes to actually not even be good, but just feel fulfilled out of doing one of those activities. Like I just always knew when I was younger, I was like, nah, okay, this was fun, but like, why would I keep doing this? Like, I'm not gonna. What am I doing this for? And so luckily, my parents did let me, get out of taekwondo and get out of ballet and things that I wasn't really passionate about until we had the musical at
That's sixth grade musical, life-changing events for us, honestly, for both of us.
Truly, and I have a thought on that, but I'll get to that in a second. I am just so grateful that our elementary school put on a musical, and well, I guess I'll get to that thought now, but they don't have it anymore. There just isn't the funding and the time to, and I'm sure like the volunteers it takes to put on a musical with a bunch of sixth graders. But if they wouldn't have had that at our elementary school, I don't think I would have ever, I'm sure my path would have come later on in life just because serendipity, but I wouldn't have known that I like loved to sing and I loved to act and I loved to entertain people. And so the backstory there is that, born and raised in Butler, Pennsylvania, tried a bunch of different things when I was little, nothing stuck. My friends told me I talked a lot, so I should audition for the musical. I did, got the lead, and had the time of my life exploring like what that was. I had never sang in front of people before, done any sort of acting in my life, and just with The Secret Garden, just fell in love with the role of Mary, and we were all up there together.
Kids' rendition of The Secret Garden, written by who knows?
But it slapped. It still does. And do
you still remember the choreography? Sorry. The Secret Garden that's locked for...
I don't remember this at all. I'm just taking your lead.
It was arm, down, and around. Anyway,
perfect.
Continue. I'm sorry. I'll
do that next time I'm on stage. I'll work it into Little Luna.
Luna.
Exactly. Arm, swoop down. I'll tell my movement coach about that one. She'll be like, "Oh, how did we not put that into the last concert?" But that's where the seeds were formed and planted. And then from there, I started taking acting classes multiple times a week in Pittsburgh at an acting school, which is where I eventually met my agent, who I connected with in Pittsburgh, but then also at a convention in Los Angeles. And when I was at the convention in Los Angeles, circa me being like 13 years old, she was like, I want to sign you, can you move to LA? And my family and I were like, no, but we can come out and I can come out for chunks of it, time and audition. And so that agent introduced me to my then managers, and the manager that I had at the time literally had won like manager of the year award in 2008. It was just like crazy good manager, and feel very blessed that I was put in the hands of like that agency and that management company, because when from there I started traveling to LA every fall and every spring for 2 or 3 months, got all my schoolwork mailed to me like while I was gone, did my schooling, like had every test proctored by like a like a Sylvan Learning Center or whatever, whoever could sign off on tests, and would send everything back, and then would hop back into our public junior high, high school from age 13 to 18 until I eventually moved out here to LA when I was 18. So that's like the seeds of how it all was strung along. And it really does go back to the elementary school musical, that it just hurts my heart so much that doesn't exist anymore, because that completely changed the trajectory of my life, just that one opportunity. So one of my, this is like, I'm not even going to speak that over myself. I was going to say, this is probably not going to happen anytime soon, but who knows? Finances could fall into my lap tomorrow. One of like my goals is to be able to somehow get a musical program back up and running at Center Township. Wait. No, granted, someone would need to, there would need to be teachers there to actually like put that on board. But like financially, I'm like, that's one of my goals, to fund that.
That's for me too. I mean, not specifically Center Township, but just like I've literally dreamed about like starting a theater company specifically like in the vein of Summer Dramatics or MTG, because it doesn't exist anymore. I mean, MTG does, but Summer Dramatics isn't around. And you know what? I think we had like a special window of time because we were kindergartners when they did the first one. So it was very much part of our experience at that elementary school. And I didn't know how special it was to me. So my mom told me like years later that apparently every single day I'd like come home and be like, I can't wait to the 6th grade musical. When I was like in like all through elementary school, I was like talking about it, right? Little did I know that was going to be like my like Broadway dreams, right? But it was like
Yes.
crazy that like something so small. And I mean, I've had other people on here talking about the importance of arts education and exposure to, and obviously even definitely lower income communities as well, so they don't even get it to begin with.
Right.
But but how monumental that is, even if it is to two old 12-year-olds in Butler, Pennsylvania, like it ripples, right? And
It
like
does.
the people that we've since connected with having pursued this, it's like the arts and humanities is what preserves the culture of what it is to be human.
Well, I agree. And it doesn't, I would say that the majority of the people in that musical didn't go on to pursue the arts,
No.
but it doesn't mean that it didn't impact them in a positive way of like, you had to be
Right.
on stage in front of people, and just even like the motor skills of like being able to sing and dance at the same time. Like that's, doesn't matter if you're in the ensemble or had a leading role. It was like, you were all singing and dancing at the same time. And I think that's a really fun experience for kids to get to try and
Right.
be held in a space that's fun. Like I don't know. I mean, maybe there were people in our class that had negative experiences, but I feel like overall it was just fun. Like everyone was just having a fun time.
I think the parents definitely stressed out about it. Like I think it was very high stakes for all the adults involved.
But I think is
But
that not everything with a kid, with something like with a parent that their child is pursuing? I feel like that's a soccer game, that's a musical, it's a dance recital. Like it's always way more intense for the parents.
right. And the kids are just like, I'm just happy to be here. I think it's just like at the end of the day,
Totally.
hey, maybe like someday in Butler there'll be the Bell Bishop Performing Arts Center. Can you imagine? That's like kind of great. Should we do
Oh
that?
wait, I just I just got so excited. The Bell Bishop Performing Arts
It
Center.
kind of has a ring to it. I like it.
It's so great.
Should we do that?
And you can handle and by handle I mean like put people in charge, because you're going to be doing your own things. It's like you won't have time to be there.
Yeah, same for you, but they can name it after us.
You could be over the wing of musical theater, and I could be over the wing of like pop music, and together there is like just an abundance that could be done at that Performing Arts Center.
Hey, listen, I think there truly are, no matter where you are, there's going to be talent, there's going to be interest, but it has to do with accessibility, and it has to do with, I think, especially if there are people that come in that are be like, we do know what we're doing and we do know how much joy, and it comes from the right place, it'll catch.
There has to be that element. Yep.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like we like lucked out with Miss Leyland and Miss Muscatello, like who were, it wasn't, and that's what I'm saying kind of with even like I want to fund it at Center Township Elementary School. It's like there has to be teachers and adults there that are willing to take on those roles with joy and that are good with kids, but also have knowledge of the theaters of the theater and the arts to know how to even put together a musical or a play.
Yeah.
So we can dream. We can dream.
Hey, maybe. I'll never say never. It's kind of one of those things I've just like always kind of kept in the back of my heart, being like, okay, I trust that that'll happen at some point. I don't know when, I don't know what capacity. I mean, I even sort of did it. I was the artistic director at the Strand Theater last year and like ran a kids program and was like, this is great.
So amazing.
But anyway, yeah. So we'll have to put a pin in that and like check back in and be like, hey, you wanna run a program for be found like headed and then like give all the work. You do it over there, okay? We're gonna be over here working and you can
Exactly. I mean, maybe later in life when I'm retired, I would want to be there in person. But otherwise, honey, we're working on our own dreams over here.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those ones. We'll see in so many years how that will. But that's so great that like you felt the same way about that and how
Center Township is on my heart deeply, and I really want to give back to the school in that way. Like I know that there's things I can do in the interim, but on the artist a paycheck that I am on, but I'm excited to like really dive in when the income is there and the funds are there, which I know will be in just a matter of time.
Yeah. So okay, so you moved to LA then at age 18, and I remember you had a recurring character on the Disney Channel. Like, what was it like being like a child actor in LA during the like early 2000s. Like that's like bonkers ball change.
I feel like I want to ask you that question because I only can see it from my own perspective, which felt very normal for me. Like, I didn't, as kids, you really only understand your childhood to the degree that you understand it because you're in it and living it. Like, I feel like you can
Right.
only like be so far away from it. So even though nobody else at our high school was going to California twice a year and auditioning for projects and occasionally booking things like the reoccurring role on Disney, it's like that was my norm though. And I feel like I had a very normal high school experience, even though I know in the textbook version of like normal, I'm aware that it wasn't very not normal. But since I moved, or I should say, since I like lived back and forth in both places, it didn't it just wasn't in the same category as I know a lot of my friends that straight up moved to LA when they were 13, 14, 15, or younger.
Yeah.
And they were either homeschooled or did online. And that was their world, was like auditions all the time. For me, that was a world for a couple months. And then I
Yeah.
would pop back into, our public school and go to football games and just do whatever everyone was doing. And so for
Right.
me, it was normal and I loved it. But what's funny is I would always like, let's say we were at a Friday night football game, like we already know we're not going to win because I don't think they won
I
like
mean,
a single game while we were in
not
high
a
school.
single
But
one. I was in the marching band,
I'm
just
not
being
gonna
like, I'm gonna sneak Twizzlers in my band bag and play the trumpet and crush on
exactly.
the other trumpet player, and that's what's gonna
Listen,
happen.
I'm not gonna talk trash. I can't play sports whatsoever. But we're all like, our school spirit was always so high, which was so fun because it's like we weren't the
That's all we
football
had.
games, like the team wasn't good, but the school spirit was unreal, and it was the place to be on a Friday night. I feel like there was like, no matter what kind of friend group you were in, like everyone was there. And I would, a few times, like, because I would always go to LA in the fall for episodic season, used to be a thing, and in the spring pilot season used to be a thing. And when my dad and I would always drive across country to come out to LA since we'd be here for so long. We'd just bring our own car. And I would cry my eyes out leaving the game, getting in the car for the first like day of the drive. I'd just be crying because I'd be so sad to leave everyone at school and like just feel like I'm missing out on that. But then I would get to LA and I'd get into my rhythm, not the first 2 years, because I didn't have a single friend for a couple of years out here in California, just because it was, I didn't go to school out here. I was popping into an audition. You don't really make friends in an audition waiting
No.
room, and then you leave. And I was with my dad, and I was like 13, like just no friends whatsoever, except for my neighbor in the apartment below me that I like forced to be my friend, who's sweet emo kid. And I was like, please be friends with me. Please hang out.
Please, you're my only friend.
Please be my friend.
Well, I'll listen to My Chemical Romance if we can just sit together.
Like,
please.
I'll get swoopy bangs. Just kidding. We all know that
Chemical
nothing gets swoopy bangs. It's just we all know. Well, we don't all know. Most people listening to this probably don't know me at all, but I used to have hair down to my waist, and that was my look, and I could not change my headshot whatsoever, according to
Oh my God, I still live that life. I'm like, personally, my hair is my personality. There's no way.
You're like, I just took new headshots. It's staying. But
I paid $1,000 for this shit. So
yeah, right, exactly. So I didn't have any friends, but after the first 2 years, I did start making friends out here, especially once I booked the Sweet Life role when I was 15 and then filmed it 16, 17, 18. Or 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there. I didn't have friends out here at the beginning, so it wasn't hard to leave those times. But then once I started making friends in the years to come, the same thing would happen. I'd go to leave LA and I'd cry the whole first day of the drive back to Pennsylvania because I loved it so much, and I loved acting, and I loved my friends here that I had made. And it was just a funny juxtaposition that, I'd like cry leaving high school, and then I'd get to LA, and then I'd cry leaving LA. And it's just that part of my experience I remember very deeply. But that's a beautiful thing. Like, I loved both of my whatever lives, you could say, so much. But that was a very long-winded way to say it feels normal to me because that was my experience, but I know that it is not normal because that was not what anyone else at our high school was doing.
No, but that's cool. I mean, I very much understand that now as an adult. I mean, I literally do that. Like, that's what I do. Like, being in New York, like, I don't like living in New York. I hate it, actually. I don't like being here. I think it's not, I mean, growing up from in a farm town, and coming, and my partner lives there in Pittsburgh. He owns a business. He's in the steel industry. Very Pittsburgh of him, and then I, I'm
Very.
like, all right, but you're right. There are seasons. I mean, it's a little bit different now, but what's also different is that everything's online first.
Right.
So it's like, why do I have to be here all the time? I don't. Like, it's possible to have a sublet. It's possible to travel. I have a car. I park it on the street. Does that suck up 3 hours of my week to park the car? Yeah, sure. But at the end of the day, it's worth it to like have this kind of Hannah Montana dual life, because it's like, for people like us who have big dreams, but like we need to follow what works for us. And I think
Mhm.
there's this idea in the industry and in entertainment that's like, well, you got to go all in or you're not going to get it. And it's like, well, why do I have to sacrifice my quality of life for this? Because then all of a sudden I become desperate
Totally.
because,
So,
you know what I mean?
and that's a perfect segue into, I don't feel connected to acting anymore. I haven't for years, and my music was birthed out of me allowing myself to stop acting. Now, did I ever make a public statement about it? No. No one needed to know because I didn't book enough things for anyone to even know that I was stopping auditioning. But like I had to internally, and like of course I sent my agents and everything an email, but I had to fully quit to allow myself to explore, who I was in the current moment, which had really outgrown the actor that I chose at 12.
Mhm.
And it's not a sad thing. I think it's just an evolution of life. And I really I have no interest in acting anytime soon. I think one day I'll probably feel that itch again. But I've, that Secret Garden musical, we didn't just act in it, we sang in it. And I've loved singing as long as I've loved acting. It's just when I signed with my first agent and manager that I mentioned, my manager made me pick while I was signing the contract, and I know that that was her way of just no. I understand why she did it in hindsight. Like it was her way of guiding a 13-year-old that was only going to be here for a couple months, at a time.
Mhm.
And I'm so glad she did. I'm so glad because I just know that's the way my life was, meant to unfold. But because I picked that at such a pivotal age, like right, a preteen girl, then later becoming a woman, now, in my late 20s, I had to mentally undo that something I chose at 13 was something I had to do forever. And I really didn't, I always knew and like said to myself, like, I'm going to make an EP one day when I'm like 30. But I never really allowed myself to pursue the idea of being a musician because that wasn't what my training was in. That wasn't what my years of work was in. That wasn't what the finances had been poured into. But in probably like a year before quarantine, I really was like, okay, I already know, like I've always known my name would be Little Luna. I know I'm going to make this music. I have a rough idea of the sound to at least start with and start taking into sessions with producers and see what we go with. And it was during the pandemic where I just knew like, okay, it's time to make that switch. And for me, that was quitting acting cold turkey and allowing myself to fully step into it being 100%. So like I know what you're saying of
Mm.
like why does it have to be all or nothing? For me, it had to be all or nothing to really give
Mhm.
myself a chance and not get in my own way. But that said,
Mm.
you were saying how it's, why do I have to sacrifice my quality of life? Like me continuing to be an actor was sacrificing my quality of
Yeah.
life. But I was
Oh,
just doing
I
it to
understand that.
myself. I was doing it to myself.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, and I think, and I mean, the interview that I just had, I mean, it's might be in a different order in the seasonal, but I interviewed a woman named Kelsey Beckert that I toured with. And it's like, especially like to pursue something in the arts and be successful at it, like nowadays, like, is so many hours of work and training. And when you eventually get to a point where you're a different person because people change and you grow and you realize you want different things, there's like this moment of grief of like, wait, like, is that it? Like, am I just gonna stop
Is that it?
doing all this
Mhm.
stuff? Like when my whole life up to this point was to make this one goal happen, but then there's also the realization, maybe you achieve part of the goal and you're like, wait, this isn't what I thought it was gonna be. Or like, hey, wait, I'm not like actually happy here. Like, what the fuck? It's like, so there's a lot of real realizations that happen over time. It's not like instant for most people, right? But
No.
it's this listening to yourself of being like, you know what, this is what makes sense to me it feels good to pivot in this way. You know what? And there's like a sense of bravery and, well, not brave, like honest to God courage and self-love that comes to listen, to like really truly stop just hustling for the sake of hustling, really out of fear
Mhm.
of failure, and
Mhm.
to sit down and be like, you know what? Let's like just listen to this gut instinct for a second. Let's listen to this voice because maybe it knows what the fuck it's talking about. You know?
Totally. Totally. And I don't know if this has happened with you, but for me anyways, like I am able to step into my music so fully and believe in myself to a ridiculous level. Like I am my own number one fan. And I genuinely believe that like I will be able to take this thing that I love, right? Right now it is happening and it is moving, but like I believe it will turn into a career. And I have that like undoubted faith within myself because I didn't have that
Mhm.
in acting, and I most of the time got in my own way. Like, and I'm not saying that to be self-deprecating, but I think that there is a point in your life where you are brutally honest with yourself as an artist,
Yep.
where you're like, yes, there are things that are out of my control, but for the things that are in my control, what needs to change here? And so many lessons that like were hard to learn in acting, I'm now able to apply with music, and just be in a completely different mindset with it because I am out of my own way. I am confident in myself. I'm open and I'm learning, and I realize that like I'm a baby in it, but it doesn't matter because the internal lessons that I needed to learn as far as being an artist, just in any category, I feel like I've learned at least for this season of life. And that's just so freeing because now I can just make my art.
It's just so nice reconnecting with people and they're living their dreams and following the uncertain path that leads them to great success. And it's just so wonderful, isn't it? It's so great. We're going to take a little pause here for you to really hear while you're in the midst of this conversation with Rachel. Sorry, with little Luna. I know her so well as Rachel. But in this conversation with little Luna, I want you to hear her music and really, she's really walking the walk, y'all. Her music is incredibly inspiring. The poetry is so personal and like healing in a way. So here is one of her original songs, Last Time. And let me tell you, it's a bop. I have it on my playlist. I listen to it a lot.
I think that I was supposed to be somebody else, and I don't know me anymore. So I've been shedding my skin, versions of me unraveling, talking to the good girl I've been for the last time, shedding my skin, versions of me unraveling, talking to the good girl I've been for the last time, for the last shedding my skin, versions of me unraveling, talking to the good girl I've been for the last time, for the last time. Shedding my skin, versions of me unraveling, talking to the good girl I've been for the last time, for the last time, for the last
Y'all, it's just so catchy. It's so good. I love it. I really do. I love all of her music. I really hope you guys follow her on Spotify and subscribe. And I think she's going places. I'm really excited. I know I say that a lot about most of my guests, but seriously, I'm so proud of her. I've seen this journey. I feel just from talking to her and seeing it that it's so aligned and so beautiful. And I hope you become what she refers to as little lunatics, which I think are the self-titled fan base that has they've called themselves that. And honestly, it's a good name. I perhaps I am also a little lunatic. Here we are. But anyway, let's get back to the conversation with little Luna. I really want to talk about like the being in your own way, because that was a big theme in our first season, where I was like basically just figuring out like, how am I like blocking myself? And I brought on this teacher from college who was brutally honest with me. She's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're like totally in your own head. Like, stop. And this is like on the podcast. I was like, you know what? I'm keeping it because she's right. You know,
Yes.
and she's like, and I think for me, I want to kind of talk about like, what was the point where you realized you're getting in your own way? Because for me, it was like, I was like, why am I so afraid of these people? Why am I so afraid of making these choices? There's like two very loud voices that come in. Well, actually, one of them's really loud. The other one's quiet. And the one that's really loud is, we're looking for this. This works. We want this type. We want you to act like this. This is what you should sing. This is what you should do. This is what we're looking for. But the other voice is that one statement that they really just wrap it all up with, which is completely counterintuitive to what they already said, which is, we just want you to be who you are, which is actually the truth. That is really what they all want. But you can't really be who you are when you're listening to all this other shit. So you have to, for me, it was like, I had to be like, I don't have a goddamn thing to lose, because here's the deal. If I keep going like this, I'm not going to make it, because I'm going to be miserable, and my quality of life, I'm going to be depressed, and I don't want to do it anymore, because
that's it.
I don't want to do it anymore. And if I don't want to do it anymore, then I'm not going to fucking do it anymore. Right?
Yeah.
But I have to give myself the opportunity to stop letting all of these voices controlling me from controlling me. I have to be like, you know what? You're not right. I don't care. I'm not going to listen to you. I have nothing to lose, because the other option is happiness and choice over here. And I have the choice to leave this at any moment. And actually, you don't have any control over me. And if you say no, so be it, because I'm going to leave anyway.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
What I mean?
So well said. No, I couldn't have said it better myself. Truly.
Like, is that the moment that you hit with with music, rather, where you're like, this is calling to me, and like, I literally can no longer ignore it. And like, what do I have to lose? I have nothing to lose. There is nothing.
Yes. And I think, what's cool about that sentiment and thought, and like, I would call like a growth mindset, is that it doesn't matter if you're in the arts, like anyone listening to this, no matter what your job is, I feel like, everyone has those different voices depending on, how many and what they're saying in detail. But like, the one that's like, do this, this, and this, and be this person and step into this role. And the other one is, but what about this? Even though, it's potentially like harder or not financially secure or scary, or you have no experience in it, but it's like, that's it. It's like, we're just ever evolving creatures. I think it's kind of insane that you get out of high school, you pick something at college, and then you do that forever. Like, that just doesn't even make sense to my brain. But and I know there are people out there that are like, oh no, like I've always wanted to do this. I'm like, and that is great.
Good
and I
for
love
you.
that for you.
I love that for you.
I feel like the majority of people I talk to, though, that's not necessarily it. And but people get fulfilled in different ways. And for some people, like, a job is just more so an element of their day to day, rather than something that takes up so much of their mental space and time. So it can be easier to stay in a role if that's you're like, oh, like that's just my job, but my big passions are like in my family, or like in my hobby that I do, or whatever it might be. For me, I'm like, my career has got to be it's got to be not self-sacrificing anymore, because I just think that life is too short and we spend a lot of hours on our career. It was a string of several little moments over the course of literally 7 years saying, it's time to make music as Little Luna. It's time to make music as Little Luna. It's time. But my like final moment was, I was in a meditation at a class here in LA. It's very LA.
I'm very LA.
sitting in a meditation. No, I was sitting in a meditation. And before the meditation started, I just asked, like, whatever you want to call it, God, universe, source. I was like, please just, I feel like I'm supposed to be making this music. Give me a why. Because I love music more than anything. And I love to sing and I love to entertain people. But what's the why here? Because I was getting to entertain people and, do that in a different way through acting. And I ended up not being fulfilled anymore, which once again, I think is normal. And that's just the progression. But I was like, please, like, give me a why. And in the meditation, like, I've never heard like an audible voice of anything, but when like a new thought comes to you that you've never thought before, and you're like, oh, this feels like I just like pulled this down from the collective consciousness, or whatever words you want to put on it. It's a thought that just hits you hard, and you're like, oh, that's a new thought to my being. And like what I thought or heard, whatever, was like, you are supposed to bring people joy through music. That's it. And I started like weeping, and I was like, that's it. That's my deeper why. And that makes sense to me, and that tracks. And I got out of the meditation and I messaged my best friend, Jaguar twin, who's like very spiritually exploratory, you could say. And he's like, yeah, I believe it. Like, follow that.
Yeah.
I don't want to say voice, because once again, I didn't hear anything, but follow that thought.
But you could be, I mean, yeah, just to comment on that, I think I'm very big into like spirituality, and I've truly found my own practice, and that a large part of that had to do with 2020 and going back to Butler and being in nature and like healing and all that stuff. But I think that thought, after doing my own exploration on that, I would call that your intuition. I would call that personally like your higher self, whatever it speaks to. It could be to anyone, whatever beliefs you hold, it doesn't matter, but it has a different feeling to it when it's true intuition, or it's, if you want to think about it, it's like your guide's talking to you, or your whatever, you're feeling your guts. Like all of these things are synonymous, right? To me, at least, what I believe.
Yep.
And I had a very similar thing too, where I like, this is like during 2020, it was the fall. I was also meditating. I was freaked out because I was like, wait, I know I should go back to New York, because there was like talk of Broadway opening or whatever. And I was like, I know I need to move back to New York. I thought I had to. I was like, I think I have to go. I think have to. Like, because this is what I've been doing, right? This is the answer. I have to go. And I did one of these meditations, and I just like sat there and like got quiet. And it was very like visual, actually. Like I saw in my head, like a tree with roots growing down if I were to stay in Butler. So it was like, what am I supposed to do? And if I stayed in Butler, these roots were to branch out and create an entire network that was going to be like my life source. And I was like, that makes no sense, because there's nothing in Butler, right? And then I was like, well, what if I go back to New York? And it was like a cul-de-sac. It like turned me back around and spat me out. And I was going to just end up back in Butler anyway. And I was like, well, that's crazy. And it like was like a deep knowing. Wow. It was like, you have to stay. And I was like, this logically makes no sense, but we're going to do it. And when I followed that, I met my partner the next week. I knew I was going to meet him too. It was like that after I had the meditation, I was like, and now I meet my partner. Literally met him the next week. Then I became the artistic director of a children's program. Then I started the podcast and connected with people all over the world. That connected me to this girl, Emily, who has a huge TikTok following. Now I teach people all over the world. There was another meditation that I did that was like very similar to yours. That was like, why? What is my why? And mine was, I'm to lead darkness to the light, or like unveil the truth and bring the light in situations that are covered and are secretive and are like the entertainment industry. And like, I was like, all right, I'm going to use what I have in this podcast, and we're going to talk about it. And that's what I'm going to do, And there was like this understanding of like, I mean, I don't know if you went through a period of grief with acting. I mean, obviously where you're like, I'm letting this go, but it was like, why am I not booking here? I don't understand. I'm doing everything everyone's telling me to do. What the fuck? Right. And then it was like, there was this deep sense of like, well, you're not meant to be in the way that it is right now. Like you don't fit into how this is operating. You're meant to like help kind of come in a different way and change it to a higher but who knows? CBD with that. But anyway.
I love that you shared that because A, I didn't know. B, I think it's really cool to share different experiences of how people make great shifts in their life. Because when you don't think about it, you're kind of like, I don't know, I just did it. But then when you actually think of, like, when you trace back the little string of events, you're like, oh, okay, no, this was like, I really think, like, if your eyes are open to your life, like, so much is in front of you, just like waiting for you to take a hold of it and mold it and shape it and live truly in, like, your truest self, like your most authentic self, which often comes from switching careers, leaving partners, cutting your hair, just doing things that are a refresh,
Never cutting the hair. Did you cut your hair and get new headshots?
Listen, when I cut my hair, I tell you what, I went to my chin. I shaved the back of my head now. I have an undercut. Like, I'm just really living my best life, not like my headshots. And that's very freeing to me. And I will say, you said, did I have a mourning phase? And I really didn't, because I've always wanted to make music and have my own artist project. So it's almost like I didn't even really have a mourning phase with acting, because for very many years I knew I was supposed to, like, be pursuing music, and I just wasn't, like, listening to that voice. So the day I sent the email, no one was around. I didn't tell anyone in my life. I just sent it, shut the email, and felt the deepest relief off of my shoulders. And I was like, it doesn't matter. And I don't know if you resonate with this, or anyone listening who has potentially stepped into a people pleaser role, but as an actor who started as a child, my music is really birthed out of allowing myself to not be an actor, allowing myself to work on not being a people pleaser anymore. And, part of people pleasing is codependency issues, but that's for another day. But the other part of it is really, like, feeling like to get somewhere in life or to have people enjoy being around you, you need to mold into whatever they want you to be. And that, I mean, like, I think that the healthy actors I know in my life have cracked that code and are healthy within themselves and also able to be actors. I think that that's a pretty hard code to crack when you start as a young kid, because you just, as a kid, naturally, like, you are in, like, people pleasing mode, and not, like, I feel like there's, like, it's almost like the two opposites. Like, part of you as a kid is just like, I'm just a free little being spinning around the world. And then the other part, though, is like when you start to try something structured, is like, oh, when I go into an audition, like, everyone got a reaction when I did this, and people enjoyed this when I wore this, and it just sinks in really quickly. So my music is a lot about, like, not being a people pleaser anymore and stepping out of that. And so when I sent that email and shut the laptop, I was like, now I can start on this next chapter of not being a people pleaser and really just operating out of what is my healthiest self and what kind of art do I want to create from that space. You do not need to hire me. I am the job. I've created the job. I'm the job.
Yeah, I am the job. I'm the job. That takes such a level of, like, self-awareness and peace and goal. Like, it and it's earned, right? Unless you're just gifted with that randomly. I was randomly gifted with that for, like, a small window of time when I needed it. And then goodbye. See ya. Went away. I like, find it again. But that's so beautiful and wonderful for people to hear, because it's like, especially being in somewhere like LA, where I feel like people are, like, always, like, looking over each other's shoulder to, like, network and, like, connect. And, like, it's, like, so much about, like, how can I make you like me so I can get something from you?
It's so true. But you know what, though? The longer I live here and the more that I think about it, because, like, I love LA. I hope I live here to the day I die. I am that person that I'm like, I love all the parts of the city that people normally don't like and get stressed out. I'm like, I love it. It's a part of LA. Like, it's part of the whole package, and I'm here for it. But I think that, like, what I've been having just kind of thoughts on more recently is, like, yes, of course that's present in LA. Of course it's present in New York, in Miami, and all the big, like, let's say, hubs of business, entertainment, you name it, just the big hubs of networking opportunities. But I also feel like it happens in Butler or in the small towns in America. You're just talking about different things. Everywhere. It really is. It's like keeping up with the Joneses. And it's like, you might not be trying to talk to someone because they're going to hire you and get you a job, but you're trying to, like, talk to someone to see like what school that your friends' kids are going to, and what dance class did they get into. And it's like, it's the same. I feel like it's the same shit everywhere. It's just a different
Yeah.
topic. And I feel like that, like, it really is important to just like find your own peace and stay in your own lane, because whatever the next person beside you is doing, it literally doesn't matter. And we have to be reminded of that. But like, it doesn't matter. You're on your own path with your own trajectory. And
Yeah.
I think that that happens. Well, I've only ever lived in this country, but I feel like that happens everywhere in the US. I can speak for here.
Yeah. It's just, I think it's just part of being human. I mean, and it's being so young, and we're talking about like ages and children like absorbing. I mean, it's a means of survival to a certain degree, but we've advanced past that as spiritual beings, being like, okay, we don't actually have to do that. And like, wait, that's like kind of the challenge of being on earth, is being like, to some degree, everybody just wants to be seen and heard and loved,
Yep.
right? That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
And so if you're unable to see and hear and love yourself, you're going to kind of start by trying to get it from other people, or you're going to learn to see and hear and love yourself by trying to get it from other people and failing, and then realizing that it only comes from you, and so that's just like I think, from what I've gathered, a very common theme is just like what it is to be human. So you're right, it doesn't matter where it is.
Yes, and then doing it, and then getting older and having to do it again. Because I feel like, like, it's like we can't just shit on our preteen and teenage years. Like, I figured so much out then. I knew so much. I knew who I was, and I loved like who I was in those times. And then, it's cliche, but like, yeah, you wake up and you're like, oh, I've changed again. Oh my God, I have to go through this process again of like who I am and what I want, and what I want from people, and what I want people to want from me. And, it's continual. And I know that, we're not even in our like 30s to 40s to 50s to 60s to 70s yet. Like, I can't even imagine how many more times we're going to have these conversations with ourselves.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess at the end of the day, we're going to learn what we learn. But the biggest favor, I mean, sometimes I look back and I'm like, I think I knew more than I do now when I was younger, because it was less complicated.
Totally. I think clear. Like the threads, like the pillars of truth. Absolutely. Like, kids are it. Kids know.
Yeah.
And then you start going through trauma as a kid, and then that's when things start to cloud. But like, like you innately know as a kid. You really have the answers to the entire universe, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, there's just, you're fresh out of getting spat out of the spiritual realm, right?
Yeah.
So like, that's my belief, right? That's what I think. So like, you're a little closer to that in a way, because like age-wise, you weren't that far removed from that sense of
totally,
Yeah. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit more before we wrap up here about your music. I know you shared with me that you this summer you performed at, I'm assuming, like a festival and opened for 5 Seconds of Summer. And like, I want to talk about the trajectory of your music. Like, I know you write about basically healing the inner child. I listened to your album. I love it. I like added some of the songs.
Thank you.
But it's so good. But like talking about the song, let's first focus on talking about the songwriting process, and then I want to segue kind of to, all right, where are we at now? Like, what is it like just trolloping through this brand new career and like a pretty big way?
At a rapid pace, yes.
Yes.
So, the short answer is, and I've already mentioned this in a different way, but I've been planting seeds in this industry and figuring out who I am for the last 11 years in LA. So making the shift into music, I feel like there are things that when you're starting out as a songwriter or as a producer, you get in your own way for. And I feel like I had already figured that out just in a different career. So by the time I was stepping into different sessions to start writing and making songs, like, I was really just coming in hot with like, here's some sound references, here's poems that I've written, like, I just was coming in hot right off the bat of like, I don't really know how to do this, but I know how to write poems, and I know you, producer person, knows how to make sounds. So like, I'll just bring in my poems and you just bring your sounds and your instruments, and we'll just finagle a song together. And even, it's too much to get into for today, but like, I had made a few demos throughout those 7 years of that, like, wanting in the pit of my stomach to be making music. And truly a few key people coming in and out of my life just as friends who happen to be in the music industry being like, yeah, like come to my studio, like let's make a song sometime. And that I think that really does happen when you're just willing to be open about the things that you want in life. But when I made the shift a few years ago to really start diving in and being like, no, Little Luna is 100%, that's what I'm focusing on. I just went into the sessions boldly and started creating demos. And of course, the beginning ones like just aren't great, but they get better the more that you do it. And the first song that I ever feel like was like really a Little Luna song was the first song I released, Shift and Go. And that will be 2 years ago this October, depending on when this episode is released. It could be, who knows, it could be today, literally 2 years ago today. But Shift and Go is the first song, and those lyrics are very much so applicable to anyone making a shift in their life. But for me, it was about shifting and going. Like, I am not an actor anymore. I am not, I still am a people pleaser, but I'm working on it. I'm shifting and I'm going. And so my songwriting process from there has developed just partly by listening to artists that I love and like geek out over their lyrics. Like Phoebe Bridgers is one of my favorite lyricists.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite lines of all times is the doctor put her hand over my liver. She told me my resentment's getting smaller. And I'm just like, oh my, I have chills saying it right now. I'm like I'm a geek for like words and imagery like that. And I am truly, I feel lucky to get to listen to music that I love. And then I'm not trying to write like anyone else because I'm not even a skilled enough writer to try to write like somebody else. I can truly only write from my own perspective of like what I'm going through. But I try to listen to other artists that I love the way that they craft words and then, and just apply it in the ways that I can for me. And then I feel like my best songs have come out of having another writer in the room who, that's like their full-time superpower is being a songwriter. So then it's like I have a producer who their superpower is producing and creating instrumentation. And then I have another songwriter who their superpower is just songwriting. And then my superpower is offering what I have through my lens and my perspective to give the world, which is like birth through Little Luna. And so I can go into the studio and be like, here's the sound references. Like as we start writing the song, like I always see a color, and often that color I'll end up turning into like the color palette for the music video. And then I'll start thinking about what will the yoga flow be that goes to this song. And so like what I bring to the table in a session is not the skill and the craft of producing or songwriting, but it's the overall vision of like, what do I want the music and what do I want this whole project to say? And songs have evolved and grown out of that. So I'd say that's my songwriting process.
I mean, that's amazing. That's so intuitive and it's so felt into. And like the closest thing I've had to that lately, honestly, is like developing the palette for my online teaching business. And like I went to Taylor Green, our mutual friend.
Hi, Taylor.
And I was like, Taylor, we love you, Taylor Green. No, I was like, here's my palette. Here are the words. I could see exactly what and she's like, okay. And then like made it happen. But it's like, that's such ammunition and like energy to be the undercurrent of it. And it just is so clearly what you should be doing.
Thank you.
Because it just,
thank you.
But it makes
sense.
It's
also like, but it's like, I've had no training in music.
Who cares?
So it's like, but I'm just saying, like, that's why it's birthed out of that place, because that's what I know. Like, that is the only way that I can write and make music, is because that's just how I'm figuring out how to do it. And that works for me. So that's great. But it was, I know you said that I opened for 5 Seconds of Summer, which I did. It wasn't at a festival. It was at 2 shows at the Hollywood Palladium, actually. 2 sold out shows, over 4,000 people a night. Insane. I got to open for them. I was the opener, and I love that for me. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And I really had to prep ahead of time. Like I hired a movement coach and I hired a vocal coach, because I'm aware that there are certain things that within music, people train their entire lives towards. And I think that there's a balance there for me where I'm like, I'm past the point now where I feel like I'm inadequate and not allowed to take up space in the music industry because I don't have training. That said, I know my vocals can be better. I know I need to know how to build stamina on stage. I know that I might not look like I'm awkward in my mind, but like I'm probably not a very fluid, like mobile being on stage. So I took those shows really seriously and like hired an incredible MD, my all female band, and put it together. I put it together and truly like took the funds, you know, out of saving to make it the best show that I could, to show everyone like this is what it's going to be. So now I just need an investor, baby. Like, or like now I just need a, you know, I'm not even going to, like, it could be a label, it could be a booking agent, it could be a rich person who wants to do something creative. But it's like, I'm going to show everyone what I can do with this insane opportunity to have these concerts, and know that this will birth more opportunities in the future to invest in myself in this way. And so I had those two shows. And then the week later, I opened for an artist who I mentioned, Jaguar Twin, at the Troubadour. And I'm so excited to see what show opportunities come in the future from those shows, because I know they will. They haven't yet, but I know they will. And I know that it is just a matter of time until I'm on tour, because I know that that's what I'm meant to be doing. So in the meantime, I'm just creating more music, creating a yoga flow for every song, creating the music videos, DMing people, like connecting with the people who came to these concerts. Most people had no idea who I was. And that's the beautiful gift of when you do get to open for someone who has a massive fan base, like 5 Seconds of Summer. Like I just, you know, I said at the shows, DM me. Like I read every DM. Might take me a while, but I read every DM. Like let's chat, because that's like, I'm not on this journey of self-discovery alone. So anyone listening to my music, like tap in. If it's speaking to you, let me know. And that's exactly what's happened, which has been really beautiful. And I mean, you know, it's been almost 2 years now of having music out. So there's little lunatics, as they call themselves, that have been there from day one. But it's been really beautiful from these shows this summer, seeing that really it is a community, in the least like cheesy culty way, but like community grow of people that are like, yo, your music is speaking to me, or like it's helping me get out of my own way, or whatever it might be. And I'm like, great, it's helping me too. I'm literally writing it as I'm working through these things.
Well, I really hope that some of the little lunatics listen to this interview so they can hear you talk about they can hear in more depth, like exactly, you know, getting to know you, you know. And I think that's why I do it. You know, I do it to bring on people like you so that I can learn from you personally. I said this before. It's like kind of selfish, because like I bring on people I admire and like I've been watching and like I've been rooting for, you know, and then to have you on. So really appreciate you coming on today and telling your story, being so generous. I was so grateful that like you were able to share all this. It's so just inspiring to hear and healing in a way, to like know it doesn't matter what you're pursuing, but like to pivot, to change, to, you know, look at things in a different way is not bad, but yet is encouraged and is also,
it is needed. I think it's
universal and needed. Yeah, like everybody needs to do it. Yeah.
Well, I'm equally as inspired by you, truly, even hearing how you had that a similar but different meditation that shifted you into your next chapter of life. It's just cool to hear that other people experience those things as well. So I really appreciate you having me on, and it was fun just to catch up. It's been when did we graduate? A long time ago.
A decade? I don't know. A while. We were this
11 years.
Yeah. 11 years. Holy shit.
Wild.
Yeah, I know. Crazy. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, or Little Luna. I know you as Rachel, but Little Luna coming on. And you have a wonderful evening. Thank you so
Thanks, Sarah.
And that sums up our episode for this week. I really appreciate everyone listening in, gaining that information. I just love sharing these stories of these people that I very, very much admire, who I've either watched for a long time, like Rachel, Little Luna, or just some of these people that I've known and kind of seen them develop into themselves. And I'm really glad that they're now on your radar, listener. I really hope you check out more of Little Luna's music. All of their information is listed below, as far as their social media handles and where you can find their new music, and really keep an eye out for them, because they're on the up and up, man. They're doing some great stuff. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, write a review. This helps it get out to more people. And I think that these messages and these conversations are important for artists, for just anyone that's looking to be inspired, that's looking to do things a different way, and to start some conversations about like, okay, how can we individualize our own life? Like, things don't have to work the way that we may be told they are. So, send these to someone if this was helpful to you. Don't forget to follow us on our socials at jackofalltrades_podcast. Hit us up on our email, jackofalltradespodcast2020@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners. And also, if you have any recommendations of people you think would be a really good guest on this podcast, they have a really cool story, they are perhaps a master in one thing that's really cool, or they are a person that's good at a bunch of stuff and doesn't live life the I don't know, normal quote unquote way of just following one thing, let us know. We'd love to hear about it. And without further ado, I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope it's full of love, and yeah, talk to you next week. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.